The Middle Kingdom is often cited as the classical period of ancient Egypt. Considered a golden age for ancient Egyptian art and literature, this period also saw the construction of massive temples, such as at Karnak, and other impressive architecture. But what led to the rise of the Middle Kingdom, and why did it eventually fall? Keep watching as we explore some key events in the formation and eventual decline of the Middle Kingdom. The rise of the Middle Kingdom followed a period of decline in Egypt. Climate change, foreign invasions, and civil war had ravaged the country, bringing famine and destruction to Egypt. Egypt's rule became increasingly decentralized, with provinces asserting independent rule. The period of decentralized power that preceded the rise of the Middle Kingdom followed the end of the Old Kingdom and is known as the First Intermediate Period. This time of political and economic chaos lasted around 100 years. During that time, Upper and Lower Egypt were separated, and two rival dynasties emerged. The Theban kings ruled Upper Egypt with their capital at Armat, while the Heracleopolitans were based in their city of Heracleopolis Magna in Lower Egypt. The two dynasties intermittently warred with each other, often around the boundary of the kingdoms, which is thought to have been located in the region of Abydos. The Theban rulers were proved to be the ultimate victors when King Mentuhotep II took the throne of Upper Egypt during the 2000s BCE. His reign would see the rise of the Middle Kingdom and the reunification of Upper and Lower Egypt. Although not much is known about the final war between the Thebans and the Heracleopolitans, it is recorded that Mentuhotep launched a decisive campaign against Heracleopolis in around the 40th year of his reign. Although the details aren't clear, Mentuhotep's forces were eventually victorious, unifying the country and bringing Upper and Lower Egypt under Mentuhotep's rule. Mentuhotep assumed the name Horus, divine of the White Crown, signifying that he was the king of a unified Egypt. Although there was ongoing conflicts with the Bedouin, who continued to raid the delta from the north, Egypt was essentially reunited. Mentuhotep consolidated the unification with the submission of the local governors of Middle Egypt, most of whom he allowed to retain their positions in exchange for their loyalty. Later in his reign, he also annexed northern Nubia, further extending his power. Mentuhotep moved the Egyptian capital to Thebes, and he installed his most loyal supporters into positions of power. However, he was a shrewd ruler and also allowed defeated Heracleopolitans who demonstrated their loyalty to join his administration, helping him secure dominion in Heracleopolis and ensuring the stability of his reunified kingdom. The reunification was followed by a period of increased trade and building projects. When Mentuhotep II's successor, Mentuhotep III, took power, the kingdom had already begun to prosper. The reign of Mentuhotep II and the reunification of Upper and Lower Egypt is seen as the start of the period known as the Middle Kingdom, and Mentuhotep's mortuary complex contains some of the earliest known depictions of the dynastic god of the Middle Kingdom, Amun-Ra. Mentuhotep II himself was posthumously worshipped and deified, especially in the area of Aswan. Mentuhotep II was part of the 11th dynasty in Egypt, and this dynasty is thought to have ended with the palace coup by the vizier of Mentuhotep IV, Amenemhet, who probably succeeded the throne and founded the 12th dynasty. Because of this takeover, it is hard for historians to gauge the exact circumstances in which it came about. The 7 years preceding the foundation of the 12th dynasty are marked in the Turin canon as missing years. They are subsequently described as a period of chaos and despair, after which Egypt was saved by a hero from the south named Ameni. Many historians believe that this was propaganda from the reign of Amenemhet I in order to legitimize his dynastic rule. Amenemhet I moved the capital to the Memphite region, and later, during the 12th dynasty, there was evidence that the dynasty had a royal palace in the eastern delta. Amenemhet's reign was characterized by an attempted revival in the style of the Old Kingdom in terms of architecture and art. He secured his heir's succession by making him co-regent toward the end of his reign, a strategy that worked, although Amenemhet I was allegedly murdered while his son and successor, Senusret I, was away campaigning in Libya. This practice was continued by the subsequent two rulers and sporadically used to ensure a smooth succession in later eras. The Middle Kingdom continued to rise and assert dominance, with further campaigns into Lower Nubia that led to lands up to the Second Cataract of the Nile coming under the rule of Egypt. Although the Egyptians began to build a series of fortresses in the area, it is believed that the population was not entirely integrated into the Egyptian culture, despite the total occupation of the region. Many historians cite the period ruled by the 12th dynasty as the peak of the Middle Kingdom. Early in their reign, the written word was standardized into classical form. The classical form of Middle Egyptian and the first texts to be written in Middle Egyptian were compiled. One of the most famous kings of the 12th dynasty was Amenemhet III, under whom the kingdom enjoyed economic prosperity. His reign saw many extensive building projects, an expansion of mining operations in Sinai and Nubia, and the completion of the Fayum irrigation system. Amenemhet III's main achievement was regulating the inflow of water to Lake Moeris, stabilizing the water level and draining the surrounding marshes. To the east of this lake, Amenemhet III built his famous labyrinth, which was described centuries later by the Greek historian Herodotus. The labyrinth was described as being surrounded by a wall and containing 12 courts and 3,000 chambers, half of which were above ground and half of which were below. The roofs were made of stone, and although Herodotus was allowed in the upper chambers, he was not allowed below them, as they contained the tombs of the kings and sacred crocodiles. Amenemhet III ruled for around 45 years, after which his son came to power. Amenemhet IV ruled for around 10 years before he died with no male heir. After his death, the first female pharaoh to rule in her own right came to power. Sobonefru was Amenemhet III's daughter and was probably the half-sister of Amenemhet IV. Sobonefru ruled as a full pharaoh, as evidenced by her statues, which showed her in traditional royal poses and wearing the full regalia of a king. Although Sobonefru's reign was relatively peaceful, it lasted less than 4 years, and the kingdom was plunged into upheaval after her death. Sobonefru also died childless, ending the 12th dynasty of Egypt, although modern historians postulate that 2 kings of the 13th dynasty might have been her sons. For a century after the 12th dynasty ended, the royal line was plunged into chaos, and around 70 kings ruled in quick succession, some only lasting for a matter of months. After the extended period of political stability that the 12th dynasty had brought to Egypt, rivals for the throne were rife. However, they continued to rule from the established royal residence in Memphis. Despite the apparent political turmoil, Egypt was able to maintain its grip on Lower Nubia and continue to expand. The official classes prospered, and the importance of the vizier rose, with one family dominating this office for most of the first century of the 13th dynasty. Although outwardly, the Middle Kingdom continued to prosper, the lack of strong and consistent leadership began to erode the centralized power system, and cracks began to show that would eventually lead to the end of the Middle Kingdom. In the late 18th century BCE, waves of immigrants from Palestine began to come to Egypt. Although immigration from Southwest Asia had occurred in previous centuries, it became more widespread under the rule of the 13th dynasty. The new immigrants brought with them new technologies, and due to the influx of people, many retained their cultural practices rather than assimilating as previous generations had. The Middle Kingdom was struck another blow when, towards the end of the 13th dynasty, Egypt lost control of Lower Nubia. Garrisons placed there settled into the area and were partly assimilated into the local culture. The Egyptian officials living in the area of the Second Cataract began to assert themselves, serving as rulers, and the powerful Nubian kingdom of Kerma incorporated the region. The Palestinian immigrants who had settled in the eastern portion of the Nile Delta also began to dominate trade with Western Asia. This prosperity made their most prominent settlement of Avaris a trade hub and a melting pot of cultures, attracting merchant Canaanites, Palestinians, Minoans, and Egyptians, and elements of all the different cultures combined to create a unique culture now known as the Hyksos. In Egypt, 2 rival dynasties emerged, the 13th and 14th dynasties. The 13th dynasty, which is often seen as a continuation of the Middle Kingdom, kept its seat of power in Memphis, while the capital of the 14th dynasty was probably in Avaris. The now decentralized power structure paved the way for the Hyksos kings to dominate northern Egypt, probably due to their control of trade in the region, once again splitting Egypt into 2. While texts written by later Egyptian kings depict the rise of the Hyksos rulers as a violent military conquest, historians now believe that it might have been a more gradual infiltration based on diplomacy and trade. As the new kingdom rose, The vilification of the Hyksos rulers might have been more about propaganda that supported the unification of Egypt and restoring traditional Egyptian order rather than rooted in historical fact. It is not known how the Hyksos rulers displaced the 13th and 14th dynasties that were established in Lower Egypt. Historians speculate that famine and conflict between the dynasties contributed to their gradual decline and eventual disappearance in the mid-17th century BCE. The period after the decline of the Middle Kingdom is now known as the Second Intermediate Period and was characterized by the conflict between the Hyksos kings of the 15th dynasty, who ruled from Avaris, and the 17th dynasty, which ruled from Thebes. The 16th dynasty, which also ruled during this time, was short-lived and only in power for around 70 years. During their rule, they were plagued by famine, and many believed they were vassals of the Hyksos kings. The fall of the Middle Kingdom was gradual and consisted of many contributing factors. When the 12th dynasty ended, there was an issue of succession, which led to a series of weak rulers. These rulers left Egypt vulnerable to outside attacks, as they were focused more on internal rivalries than strengthening the kingdom. The power vacuum led to the rise of the Hyksos kings, meaning ruler of foreign lands, who were able to take control for over a century. Egypt's borders slowly collapsed as centralized control was lost. The Nubians then took advantage of the situation to reclaim territories that had been previously captured by the Egyptians. Egypt was then divided into smaller dynasties until the rise of the New Kingdom in the 16th century BCE. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about ancient Egypt, check out our book, Middle Kingdom of Ancient Egypt, a captivating guide to the period of reunification and the Egyptian pharaohs who ruled. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.